This is hands down the most chaotic princess in the entire solar system. Her biggest passion? Dragging herself out at midnight to solo high-level monsters. Even when she's covered in strawberry syrup, she's still got a huge grin on her face. At the crack of dawn, she hauls a mountain of monster loot back to the castle, nearly giving her old man a literal stroke. Maybe she was just that desperate for magic, but she actually had the audacity to crash a party, ruin the vibe, and kidnap her younger brother's fiancé. She's dead set on making the girl her own boss at home. I mean, hello? What kind of glitchy script is this? Our female lead is Anis. In a world where everyone from royals to nobles is spamming magic like crazy, she's the first princess and should have been the top-tier heir to the server. But unfortunately, she's got a major bug. Her mana is 0. Since she can't use magic, she had to quietly fade away from the succession list. But she didn't just give up. Her passion for magic is literally in her blood, and suddenly, her brain starts glitching as she recovers memories from her past life. She decides to use her past life scientific knowledge to DIY some flying brooms. The result? She faceplants hard, breaking more brooms than I can count. To grind for materials, she secretly registers as an adventurer and specializes in night hunts. The streets started calling her the Marauder Princess, and even the veterans in the industry give her a vibe check and respect her hustle. When she sneaks back to the kingdom, she unfortunately runs right into her old man and her little brother. The king tries to start a lecture, but his daughter pulls a psychological manipulation skill. She uses so much creative storytelling that the old man ends up completely confused. After that, she wasted no time and dipped immediately. Honestly, people are just done with this professional troublemaker. Luckily, she has a bestie in the depressed squad who specializes in poisons. This girl is also basically a magical failure, so they became a dynamic duo of disasters, hanging out in the lab and wrecking things just for the plot. While they were gossiping, the friend mentioned Anis's little brother's engagement party. Rumor has it the fiancé, Yuffie, is a magical prodigy, a total perfect child whose skills are absolutely top tier. As soon as she heard that, Anis switched to full-on gossip mode. Time skipped ahead, and the newest version of her flying broom was finally finished. Anis was beyond hyped, completely ignoring her maid's nagging. She hopped on the broom and hit the gas, finally fulfilling her dream of flying like a bird. But the joy lasted less than 3 seconds before the broom turned traitor. It accelerated out of control and pulled a Fast and Furious straight into the castle like a missile. Meanwhile, inside, a royal drama was unfolding. Yuffie was supposed to be the main character of the party, but now she was just standing there all by herself. Turns out, the little prince was having a midlife crisis early and decided he hated political marriages. He walked in hand with some pick-me girl instead. He boldly accused Yuffie of being a villainess who bullied her friends, and then he demanded to cancel the engagement right then and there. Yuffie was completely shook and stuck in a loading screen, thinking, wait, what did I even do? But the crowd was only interested in the tea and the drama. Nobody bothered to say a word in her defense. Our gorgeous girl was utterly devastated. She had spent her entire life grinding to be the perfect princess consort, so how did everything just get folded like this? Right when the atmosphere was at its peak awkwardness and secondhand embarrassment, boom, Anis crashed in like a god falling from the sky. As soon as she landed and saw her little brother hugging that pick-me girl, while Yuffie stood there stuck in a loading screen, her brain immediately connected the dots. This was clearly a toxic engagement cancellation scene. Without a second thought, she rushed in to rescue the beauty, declaring boldly, "My brother doesn't need you, but I do. From now on, you're my wife." True to her word, she tossed Yuffie over her shoulder like a sack of rice and made a run for it. The prince just stood there, stuttering, because honestly, what are the odds of stopping this chaotic sister? But she didn't stop there. She carried Yuffie straight into the conference room to present her to both sets of parents. As expected, the old man was ready to start a combat round of lecturing the moment he saw her face, but Anis wasn't having it. She clapped back instantly, exposing the spoiled prince for canceling the engagement in front of a massive crowd. She argued with ironclad logic. Canceling an engagement in public like that is basically a slap in the face. Were you trying to make her reputation log out forever? Especially since Yuffie's father is the king's best friend, not some random stranger. Despite the drama, Yuffie's father kept a cool head. He asked what the plan was since the damage was already done. Anis raised her hand and announced, "I'll take full responsibility for her life." Everyone in the room was shook, unable to process this 4D chess move. In reality, Anis's secret plot was to recruit Yuffie as her assistant to hit those research KPIs for her magical gadgets. Anis knew she was great at crafting but had zero social influence. Now, having a magical genius like Yuffie act as a KOL, and the face of her products was just top-tier thinking. She'd be manipulating public opinion while helping Yuffie get her fame back after the breakup, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Yuffie's father nodded along, thinking, that's actually pretty logical. But the king saw right through his daughter's nonsense. He called her out, saying, "Cut the drama. I know you just want to go public with your girl love vibes and bring a waifu home." Watching the two of them bicker like a comedy duo, Yuffie's father had a sudden realization. Wait, fathers and children can actually talk to each other this casually. Before this, he was always the strict parent who made his kids tremble, never giving them a single compliment. Now, seeing this, he felt massive regret for his life choices. The future father-in-law immediately closed the deal, saying, "Fine, I'll leave my daughter in your hands, princess." With the green light given, Anis revealed her true colors as a total creep. The moment they hit the room, she pinned Yuffie down and started stripping her. Yuffie was visibly annoyed, but after changing into pajamas, the two ended up sharing a bed in a very wholesome way. Yuffie asked, "Why are you even helping me? We're basically strangers." Anis pulled a top-tier flirtatious move, "Because I'm obsessed with your perfection, and I couldn't stand seeing you get bullied." After hearing that, Yuffie officially caught feelings, her heart doing backflips and all that. The next morning, the maid woke Yuffie up to meet the king and discuss the engagement fallout. But Yuffie didn't really care about that anymore. She was just curious about where that chaotic princess who kidnapped her yesterday had run off to cause more trouble. Right on cue, sirens started blaring outside like the building was on fire. People were panicking, thinking some major disaster was happening, but the maid just shut it down instantly, looking as unbothered as someone turning off a Monday morning alarm. The dust settled, and yup, our favorite menace Anis appeared once again. This time, she insisted on having Yuffie test out her flying broom. Yuffie's gut feeling told her something was off, but Anis swore on her life it was safe, begging her to just trust the process. Long story short, Yuffie trusted her too quickly. 3 seconds into the flight, she lost control and face-planted straight into the dirt. At that moment, Yuffie officially lost all faith in humanity, while Anis's credibility dropped to absolute zero. After that failed product demo, Anis dragged Yuffie to the palace to meet the old man. The king asked point blank, "So, did you actually bully that other girl?" Yuffie denied it instantly, looking more innocent than a saint. The king believed her immediately and concluded that his precious son probably had some neurological glitches to cancel the engagement like that. He decided further investigation was needed. Once the meeting was over, Yuffie obediently returned the key to the secret library. Seeing the girl being so painfully polite made the king feel a massive wave of guilt, like his family owed her a supersized apology for the chaos. Back home, Anis pulled Yuffie out to the garden again. This time, she wasn't playing with brooms, she was flexing some heavy heat, a high-end magic sword. Anis told Yuffie to try incanting with it, and boom. Yuffie pulled off a few basic moves, firing off a massive fireball like she was Natsu, before turning the sword into a color-shifting lightsaber that looked absolutely top-tier. Anis watched Yuffie swing that sword, her eyes glowing like car headlights, totally obsessed with her style. After the testing was done, the two sat down to rest under a tree. Anis casually rested her head on Yuffie's lap and passed out. Yuffie looked at her sleeping peacefully without a single care in the world and felt a massive wave of jealousy. She thought, how does this woman live such a chill life? When Anis finally woke up, she saw Yuffie's face was beet red. She thought the girl was just being shy or blushing, but when she touched her forehead, she realized Yuffie was burning up with a 104 degrees Fahrenheit fever. Anis immediately went into full-on nurse mode, pampering her and trying to soothe her with every trick in the book. In her delirious state, Yuffie finally spilled her guts. "I'm so jealous of you, you're so free, I have no idea where my future is going. Just give me an order or something so I don't have to think. My life feels like a bad joke right now." At this point, Anis pulled a talk no jutsu to clear her head. "If you don't know what to do, we'll find out together. Good things take time." After saying that, Anis pushed Yuffie down onto the bed. The scene was radiating major girl love vibes, making the poor girl's heart skip a beat, but the twist was that Anis only leaned in close to check her temperature. After that, she even sang a lullaby to put Yuffie to sleep, a bit of a clunky move, but definitely wholesome. The next morning, Yuffie was back to 100% and feeling like a beast, but Anis rushed in with some shocking news. There was an urgent quest from the Adventurers Guild. Yuffie was completely lost. "Wait, you're literally a princess, and you're doing manual labor for the guild?" Turns out, Anis is a secret whale. She grinded her way up to gold rank a long time ago. This time, things were getting spicy. Monsters were swarming everywhere to fight for territory, and the final boss was a supersized dragon. Yuffie was worried sick, but Anis's hero blood was already boiling. As royalty, her logic is simple. If you see a dragon, you gotta shank it. There was no stopping her menace energy now. Meanwhile, at the royal palace, the high officials were having a meeting that looked more like a chaotic flea market. These guys were trying to play it safe, suggesting they strengthen ground defenses. "Small problem, boys, dragons can fly. If you only defend the ground, he's just going to spit fire and turn everyone into a BBQ platter." Even worse, the dragon was planning to ship some smoke directly to the capital. Right in the middle of this deadlock, the troublemaker little brother kicked the door open. Even though he was grounded, the young man still wanted to salvage his reputation. He begged for a chance to fight the dragon to prove he wasn't completely useless, asking for one wish if he succeeded. Even though the king knew his son had limited talent but a surplus of audacity, he finally nodded and let him go, viewing it as a final chance for the kid to bleach his reputation. But life isn't a fairy tale. Just as the deal was sealed, bad news came flying in. His big sister Anis had already dragged Yuffie along to kill Steel, the dragon, first. At the front lines, the soldiers were practically on life support, and reinforcements were more delayed than a budget airline. The situation was looking completely cooked. While the soldiers were desperately defending their last towers, Anis dropped from the sky like a literal god at the most critical moment. With one strike, she sent a monster bear straight to the lobby. She handed off the small fry monsters to the commander to hold the rear, while she demanded a one-on-one solo match with the boss dragon. Anis pulled a performance enhancer out of her pocket, swallowed it whole, and buffed her stats to the max. She flipped the switch to berserker mode and dove into the monster horde, starting a merciless massacre. Watching this, Yuffie wasn't about to settle for being a background NPC. She cast a spell and unleashed a fireball so massive it looked like a Mega Man explosion. The shockwave was so loud it made the dragon in the distance pull a U-turn just to see what happened. Seeing that absolute unit of a boss, Anis's eyes lit up like high-beam headlights. She saw those dragon materials as limited edition loot. She charged in on her broom like a moth to a flame, but her first strike just bounced off the dragon's scales with a loud clink. The tilted dragon retaliated with a massive dragon roar. Anis popped her mana shield to tank it, but she still got blown away and ended up face down on the ground, unconscious. Luckily, Yuffie used a flash move to rescue her just in time. Otherwise, Anis would have definitely logged out of the server for good. Yuffie tried to stop her big sister from being a reckless daredevil, but Anis shot back. "I want to be a grand mage. If I can't even take down this giant lizard, I'll never be able to show my face again." After hearing that, even though Yuffie didn't fully grasp the level of her sister's insanity, she officially signed up as her ride-or-die homie. They both dove back into combat. Yuffie quickly noticed the dragon had a full-body mana shield, making regular attacks basically useless. However, she found a weak spot: the wings. Yuffie used wind magic to kite the dragon and bait it out, giving Anis the chance to strike. She successfully shredded the wings, making the dragon drop like a fly. Utterly tilted, the dragon got back up, planning to fire off a tailed beast bomb to send the entire team to the lobby. With no way out, Anis decided to go all in. She broke the limiters on her magic sword and unleashed a legendary Excalibur move. This time, the dragon was officially done for. When Anis went to verify the kill, she saw it was barely hanging on. The dragon actually played it cool, total winner-takes-all energy. It sacrificed its own body and transferred its remaining power to Anis before passing away peacefully. With the battle over, the entire kingdom threw a massive party. Anis took the chance to invite Yuffie for a romantic dance under the stars. Yuffie confessed that she only managed to recover because Anis kidnapped her. The two officially opened their hearts and became soulmates. The next morning, Anis took Yuffie to her spiritual bestie's house to ask about the dragon's magic stone. This girl was absolutely hyped to hear that Anis was cursed by a dragon, since she's more obsessed with dark arts and voodoo than actual magic. With Tilty's help, Anis planned to use a seal to absorb the stone's power. But just as she was about to do a deep dive into the research, the queen, the real boss of the house, returned and called an emergency meeting. It turns out they had to deal with the situation involving the pick-me girl and the prince. The public had already pulled a U-turn, feeling sympathetic toward Yuffie, and suspecting the other girl was actually the one being framed. During the public interrogation, Anis let her inner creep loose again, demanding a private chat with the bullied girl to clear things up. She used her suspect hands technique to feel the girl out and discovered something bizarre. Turns out, there was a magic stone inside this girl's heart, radiating a charm aura that made everyone fall in love with her. She didn't actually mean to steal anyone's man. Anis reported this to the parents immediately, claiming this ability was way too broken to be left roaming free. So, she volunteered. "Leave her to me. I'll add her to my harem. I'll personally supervise her." To dig deeper, the squad had Tilty check the forbidden books, and they were floored to find out the black-haired girl is actually a descendant of vampires. That's exactly why she has that insane boy magnet power. The only fix now is to fully activate her vampire blood so she can finally control her involuntary flirting skills. Once her bloodline awakened, she gained control. But the downside is that whenever she runs out of mana, her craving for strawberry syrup kicks in. Basically, the poor girl was being manipulated like a puppet by the magic stone inside her. Right when the team was scratching their heads trying to save Lainey, the Ministry of Magic sent a summons. They ordered Anis to head down to the station and explain what the heck she did with the dragon's corpse. The boomers at the Ministry hate Anis's magical science like cats hate dogs, but she had no choice but to drag herself there. But while Anis was on stage yapping to the audience about how her research would improve civilian life, her home base got hit with a sneak attack. The maid was quick-witted enough to grab Lainey and rush to the royal palace for safety, but the enemy was already camping there. They unleashed a blast that left the maid coughing up blood. And the final boss is finally revealed. It's that absolute nightmare of a little brother, Prince Algard. He snatched Lainey by the neck in a savage backstab move, ripping the magic stone right out of her body. By the time the alarm went off and Anis teleported back to the palace, the damage was already done. The precious son had secured the vampire stone, and right in front of Anis and Yuffie, he shoved the stone into his own body. Determined to surpass his monster of a sister, the kid decided to go big. "I'm throwing away my humanity, sister." Over here, Anis screamed at Yuffie to buff and heal the other two, while she rushed out to confront her brother. "Are you out of your mind? Why would you do this?" The prince finally spat out the truth. He wanted to borrow vampire powers to usurp the throne. He was salty about forever living in his sister's shadow, unable to make the world respect him. He trashed the country, calling it broken, with a wealth gap between nobles and commoners that's basically astronomical. He couldn't accept that magic controlled everything, so he'd rather turn into a vampire to fulfill his ideals and use raw power to crush this rotten system. Hearing this, Annis was speechless and internally conflicted. She knew her brother didn't actually crave power. He was just drowning in an inferiority complex, thinking only broken strength made him worthy of being king. But this extreme path was just going to send the country to the lobby. What kind of ideal is that? So, Big Sister decided to personally step in and teach this brat a lesson he'd never forget. Annis sliced her brother's arm off, but she was still holding back in her heart. To her surprise, the kid turned on health hacks, regenerating his arm in an instant. Then he buffed his magic to fire off razor-sharp ice shards just to flex his power. Annis reacted with lightning speed, unleashing an Excalibur move to parry the hit. Even though she neutralized the attack, Annis was completely drained and gasping for air. The prince was shocked, unable to understand how his sister became this cracked. He demanded to know what she was actually after. Annis shut him down. "I'm just a normal person obsessed with magic. Got it?" Meanwhile, Yuffie was busy healing Lainey and the head maid. Lainey knew she needed to consume blood to recover her mana. Yuffie was about to offer herself up, but the maid blocked her immediately. Naturally, the maid wasn't about to pass up a once-in-a-lifetime chance to get close to her crush. So, she bit her lip and dove into a mouth-to-mouth mana transfer that was intense to say the least. Even though Lainey's wounds healed, the pain remained. It turns out she had a Bluetooth connection with the prince. The more he got punched over there, the more she felt the agony over here. Back at the arena, thanks to his Deadpool-style healing factor, the prince started taking the upper hand. Annis's magic sword was shattered into pieces. She had no choice but to activate Dragon God mode, using the dragon's power for one final lethal strike, burning through every last drop of her mana. Unbelievably, the brother was also seeing red, determined to go for one last all-or-nothing clash with his sister. Even though it felt like her heart was being ripped out, Annis had to finish it. Right at that point of no return, Yuffie rushed in and screamed, calling both siblings absolute idiots to their faces. Why did they have to keep stabbing each other, especially over such meaningless things? That critical question finally extinguished the flames of war between the two. Annis walked over to her defeated brother, who finally let go of his obsession. Memories started playing back like a slow-motion movie. Turns out, the seeds of this conflict were planted when they were tiny. Annis was obsessed with magic research and used to drag her brother along as a literal guinea pig. The experiments were usually total fails, leaving the poor kid with some serious psychological trauma. But every time, Annis would swear it was safe and apologize so sincerely. Then, she'd reach out her hand for a makeup handshake, inviting him to keep being crazy with her. Even though the prince was scared out of his mind, he could never resist his big sister's gentleness. He decided to nod and keep being her partner in crime. He knew better than anyone how warm her hand actually was. But the moment the two siblings stepped outside the city walls, they got jumped by a horde of monsters. Annis decided to bait the monsters away to protect him. By the time she found the prince again, the boy finally realized his sister loved him more than anything. But nobody expected that this exact event would trigger a massive wave of toxic rumors. The salty nobles started accusing Annie's left and right. Out of pure jealousy, they claimed she tried to use the monsters to assassinate the prince. With the public pressure becoming unbearable, Annis finalized her decision to renounce her right to the throne. She did it to prove her innocence and show she never had any intention of shanking her own brother. However, this move caused their sibling bond to slowly fall apart. The prince began to distance himself, while Annis just had to suck it up and deal with the pain. Their old closeness was officially a thing of the past. Yet, even now, the prince still doesn't understand why she gave up the crown. In his heart, he knew Annis was smarter and cared more about others. He truly wished she would just be the king. But the ship had sailed, and there was no way to pull a U-turn now. Ultimately, the prince's treason was caught on 4K, and the receipts were verified. Even though the old man was heartbroken, he had to sacrifice his precious son, stripping him of his status and sending him to the border to kick rocks. Before the final goodbye, Yuffie took the chance to vent her anger over the breakup, slapping the prince so hard he saw stars. Those two are officially done for life. Before leaving, the prince specifically asked Yuffie, "Make sure you take good care of my big sister." The real struggle now is that Annis is the sole heir left. That means she's forced to be the next king, which basically bans her from doing any magic research. To make matters worse, in this country, you can't rule if you can't use magic. Her only option? Negotiate with the nobles to marry some crusty, old aristocrat just to pop out some magical kids. Just thinking about that makes Annis want to gag. Seeing Annis forcing a smile, Yuffie couldn't stand the heartbreak anymore. Finally, Yuffie stood up and clapped back at her own father, declaring, "I can't take this anymore. I have to save Annis from that cursed throne." The old man was actually moved by her words. Turns out, he was exactly the same back in the day, but he ended up sacrificing his own passion to help his best friend take the throne. He didn't expect his daughter to be even braver than him, like father, like daughter, one pair of girl love, one pair of boy love vibes. But the only way out for Yuffie now is to form a contract with the spirits and become a spirit contractor. That's the only way to get enough authority to make the nobles back off. However, the price is immortality. She'll have to watch her loved one grow old and log out while she potentially loses all memories of her beloved. The next morning, Annis found out and protested violently. She didn't want Yuffie to sacrifice everything for her. She was also terrified of losing her status as a princess and becoming a useless failure that nobody needs. The two of them had a massive blowout argument. Anis wanted Yuffie to find her own happiness instead of ruling in her place. But Yuffie shut it down. Nobody can replace you. I want you to be yourself and chase your passion. Your era is definitely coming, and I want to welcome that future with you. So, the two ladies decided to solo each other to settle it once and for all. They went into the battle for blood, and neither side was holding back. Yuffie unleashed her spirit powers while Anis let her dragon strength run wild. Here it is. Yuffie fired off her ultimate move, 7 celestial swords. The two of them were spamming energy blasts across the sky. This was the moment Yuffie showed Anis who the real boss of the house was, landing a hit that had Anis crying out. Finally, she had to admit that Yuffie is absolutely cracked and truly understood her heart. That night, Anis confessed her deepest secret. She has memories of a past life. This made her terrified that she was just a fake, stealing the spot of the real Anis. Yuffie dropped a bold statement. You're the one who pulled me out of the pit of despair. To me, you're the top-tier mage on the server. After saying that, the emotions overflowed, and Yuffie gave Anis a big kiss. This time, it was Anis's turn to be beat red. Yuffie took the momentum and pushed Anis down onto the bed to show her who's actually the top in this relationship. This girl-love couple is serving some high-quality fan service. The next morning, Yuffie officially became the king's adopted daughter and inherited the throne. The two decided to rule together, building an era where noble privileges are deleted and everyone can use magic. The two of them started traveling everywhere to promote the convenience of magicology. Yuffie's weapon represents the rainbow, while Anis's sword represents the sky. Their names combined represent the ultimate desire for freedom. Finally, in front of the entire nation, the two spread their wings and soared into the sky. They made their vows with the heavens as their cathedral and magic as their fireworks. The entire population got served a massive plate of romance, witnessing the wedding of the century. You've got to admit, the romance in this anime is top-tier quality. The visuals are cracked, the magical combat is vibrant, and the scenery is gorgeous. The character designs are total eye candy, especially the chemistry between the two leads. Watching them go from strangers to soulmates is incredibly addictive. The romance is clear and authentic, none of that baiting or vague stuff you see in other shows. They went straight to the finals. Yuffie's protection of Anis and Anis's reliance on Yuffie is the true soul of this story. To wrap it up, this work is definitely a hidden gem. For those who love fantasy and girl love, this is a must-watch. Finally, remember to like and subscribe to the channel. See you guys in the next video, don't miss it.